Welcome back to the second episode of Design Shop, everybody. Today, we're going to be shifting gears, and I'll be showing you how I made a digital advertisement for a coffee shop cafe. I'll be breaking down each part of the process all the way to the finished product, which I'm quite fond of. Let's waste no time and get into the shop. For our digital ad, I envisioned a peaceful morning scene with a giant coffee cup and baked treat right smack dab in the middle. Then we'll place a headline up at the top of the ad and important information at the bottom of the ad. My canvas dimensions are in a 4:5 ratio so that I can easily post on Instagram, as well as reformat the image into something like a banner ad. So I'm starting off with combining two images that I found that have a really awesome grassy nature vibe. I took the grassy field from one photo and expanded the image using the content aware function in Photoshop. The other photo would feature a distant forest and a mountain. The background is very simple in terms of detail, but I think simple calm mornings really encapsulate the imagery we'd like to evoke and associate with our cafe. I placed the cup in the center of the composition, and I took the time to blend it into our scene by adding shadows and highlights and masking out the bottom of the cup with a grass brush to give the illusion that the cup is placed in the grass. So I'm a very visual person, so I prefer to at least have a reference of the atmosphere and the color that will be in the final scene. I use color balance to adjust the hues of the cup to simulate that beautiful orangey radiant morning light. Next, I added a dish behind the cup and repeated the same process, masking out the bottom with a grass brush and adding appropriate shadows and highlights. Next, I grabbed this image of a croissant. I wanted to convey that this cafe doesn't just specialize in coffee, but they also make fresh baked treats. I masked out the shadow that came with the image, as I'd be painting in my own later. I put the croissant on the dish and started my shadow and highlight process once more. At this time, there was no visible coffee in the cup, so I added this image of a coffee splatter with a slight drop shadow and masked away part of it to make it seem like it was coming out of the cup. Then I fixed up some of the broken edges and details from the splatter. To give the splatter some motion, I added a very slight path blur. The grass was also way too bright given the time of day, so I added a levels adjustment to darken the overall grass and then used blend if to remove it from the highlights to get that desired effect. Now it's really looking like it's early morning. So we'll be leaving the coffee and croissant alone for a second and shift my focus to building the morning atmosphere I envision. I added in a spotlight overlay to quickly get some intense light spilling into our scene. Using a solid color adjustment layer, I painted in some soft haze behind the coffee and croissant. The light wasn't as intense as I'd like, so I duplicated and adjusted the mask to fit the correct light intensity. I shifted back to the coffee and tweaked some shadows and highlights before adding a levels adjustment to the splatter and using blend if to remove it from the highlights to get accurate lighting throughout the liquid. I also added a very subtle trail coming from the cup due to the intense morning light. It's these little details that really take it to the next level. I also used the same haze adjustment layer to paint in some gorgeous bounce light coming off of the cup. Since I was feeling confident with the overall art composition so far, I decided to add in some color correction with color balance and curves to really sell that morning glow. Now, going back to the coffee cup, I wasn't too thrilled with the lack of coffee at the top. So using another solid color adjustment layer, I painted in the indication of coffee swirling at the top. Then I added just the slightest bit of noise to blend it into the scene better. Now that I was feeling good about our artwork, it was time to give it a break and move on to the headline and information part of our design. After some searching, I came across this font and thought it came across as peaceful and elegant, which matched the morning vibe. I played around with the position of the words brewed and baked fresh. At first, I thought I could separate fresh by giving it a different font, but after playing around, it really didn't work. So I revisited the phrase and put morning bliss above brewed and baked so that we had copy that matched our morning scene. Dragging the text layers below the spotlight overlays added this angelic lighting to the text, which I absolutely loved. I still tried playing around with the word fresh. I put it on the coffee cup and used warp and blend if to give it the correct lighting and to blend it into the cup's surface. But a spoiler for later in the video, we get rid of it. I felt like it distracted from the composition and was a bit too much of an overstimulation. Until I deleted it later, I worked on the information section below. I started off with grabbing another font, drawing a placeholder container, and outlining a deal that if the customer were to present the ad, they would get a limited time offer of 10% off their first purchase. Maybe this was a new cafe and needed to entice customers to come try their products. Our cafe needed a name, so I went for a coffee pun and picked Cup of Joe's Cafe. I decided that the logo would be text only, just arranged in a fun orientation. It took a bit to get something I was satisfied with. I originally flip-flopped between Cup O Joe's Cafe, but went for Cup of Joe's Cafe for legibility's sake. Next, to contain the logo, I added a wooden coaster to add a bit more visual interest and used blend if to bring in some of the wood texture to the text. Over the coaster, I also dropped in a coffee stain texture and again blended it into the wood and added a slight bevel and emboss to define those edges. The container for all of this information seemed a bit bland, so I thought I could spice it up with another wooden texture. I did some rearranging of the text info and added a playful fake address below the logo to indicate where people can actually go to start their morning right. I added a very slight blend if to these pieces of text because I wanted them to be as legible as possible, since these are the details that the viewer must be able to find easily. I realized that a darker wood texture would work better to contrast from the lightness of the wooden coaster containing the logo text. After a quick swap and some color adjustments, I duplicated the new wooden texture and stretched it to create a 3D effect to simulate the top of the wooden planks. It was time to come back and add some more interest to that offer text in the bottom right corner. I did some more rearranging and made the 10% a lot bigger to catch the viewer's attention. For the 0 in the number 10, I thought it would be creative to draw a coffee bean to keep in line with our theme. And finally, after even more rearranging, I was happy with the limited time offer copy. Last stretch of the design, here we come. I wanted to balance out the info bar at the bottom with another sentiment that revisited the word fresh from earlier. I figured I could write a very small blurb about how the ingredients that this cafe uses are always fresh and organic. And there we have it, folks. Morning bliss, brewed and baked. Post-recording, I made some final edits to the lighting on the croissant and rearranged and reworded the organic and fresh ingredients text. The beautiful thing about this design being in the 4:5 ratio is that we can easily restructure it for many different online platforms. Let's say we wanted to post this on Instagram. I'd imagine that would look something like this. Since the theme of our video today is digital ads, we could also rearrange some of the info and art into a banner ad that would appear as you scroll through a website. And just taking it a step further, if we wanted to escape the digital world and print these as physical handouts that the local residents would get around town or even in the mail, we could do that too. Thanks for watching and your continued support of the channel. Stay tuned for more and visit www.rxlmedia.com if you're interested in seeing more of my portfolio and want to connect. Until next time, take care.